Today, I'm turning Taylor Swift's new album, The Tortured Poets Department, into a 5-course meal. You might be wondering what the heck I mean by that, so let me explain. As someone who loves to overanalyze lyrics and for some reason turn them into foods, I thought it would be fun to have a little release dinner party for the new album. But since I'm filming this before it comes out, I didn't have lyrics or honestly much besides fan theories to work with. But to promote TTPD, Taylor did release 5 different playlists on Apple Music that aligned to the 5 stages of grief, which kind of supported the fan theory that the album may be about grieving the loss of a relationship. So I wanted to play off of that and create a 5-course menu with each course correlating to a stage of grief and a theme from the album. Okay, enough blabbering, let's start with the hors d'oeuvres. I honestly have no idea how to pronounce that, so let's start with the first course. Love and poetry seem to be the big overarching themes of the album, and I think that pairs well with the first stage of grief. Denial. In this initial stage, you continue to romanticize the relationship and make excuses for what went wrong in the end. So for our first course, we're making a lavender bini topped with passion fruit pickled salmon and little flower petals. Again, let me explain. The main thing that I wanted to convey through this dish is what I love most about Taylor's poetry and storytelling, and that's how passionate, whimsical, and almost flowery her writing is. Like, listening to her music sort of feels like you're frolicking through a field of flowers. So we're going to be quite literal with this one and marinate the salmon with some fresh passion fruit along with some lemon and togarashi to round out all of the sweet, smoky, and salty flavors going on. And as a nod to Lavender Haze being on this playlist, which almost killed me because I absolutely adore that song, but I digress. I flavored the bellini batter with lavender buds, which, okay, to be fully honest, was just pancake mix because there's so much more cooking to do, but after that we can plate the dish. I topped the bellini with a very healthy dollop of creme fraiche, followed by the marinated salmon and some of the marinade drizzled on top as well. And I also tried to make those abstract little swirls on the plate that they do at the fancy restaurants, which, I don't know, I tried. And I also finished it off with a few colorful little flower petals on top as well. And this dish was such a good start. Everything worked so well together. And also here's me hearing the iconic line from But Daddy I Love Him for the first time. Taylor, you're crazy. Anyways, let's move on to the appetizer. Of course, I needed to highlight the highly anticipated track 5 in this video, which, if you don't know, track 5 always has Taylor's most emotionally devastating lyrics on the album, and I'm personally hoping it almost sounds cynical and angry like My Tears Ricochet or Tolerate It. But from the title of this one, I think she's finally saying goodbye to her London boy. So for our second course, we're making a twist on London's iconic dish, fish and chips. This one's a little more straightforward than the last one, so there's no deeper meanings to the ingredients or anything. We're basically just making some very tasty and slightly fancy fish and chips. For the chips portion, I made salt and vinegar croquettes, which starts with roasting your potatoes and then mashing them with butter, salt, and vinegar before forming them into little pucks of potato. And I love these because it incorporates the traditional salt and vinegar flavor on fish and chips inside the actual dish. These are so good. Okay, before I get distracted, they're then coated in flour, eggs, and breadcrumbs and fried to a beautiful golden brown. We're also frying the fish. I'm using sea bass, which I just lightly seasoned with salt, and for even more crunch, I fried up some thinly sliced garlic to make garlic chips as a garnish as well. Again, I'm trying to channel my inner fancy chef here, so I'm using a ring mold to plate this. And I'm starting by putting down a few spoonfuls of a mint and pea mash, which is basically what it sounds like. And then I stacked the croquette and fish on top of that, kind of like food Jenga, and finished with the garnishes. And I think it turned out pretty nice. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty impressed with myself here. But on to the next course. The salad. Yet another iconic song title. I think this one is one of my favorite fan theories so far. But Daddy I Love Him is an iconic quote from The Little Mermaid, which was coincidentally released in 1989. And the movie is about a girl who's bargaining with her father and ultimately the evil sea witch Ursula to give up her voice to be with the one she loves. And some fans think that this is a parallel to Taylor's past relationship, but instead of speculating about her personal life, let's make a Little Mermaid inspired dish instead. I think I'm starting to sound insane at this point, but for our third course, we're having a miso maple salad topped with crispy seaweed chips. For the veggies in the salad, I chose thin ribbons of shredded cucumber and microgreens to mimic seaweed and algae, which apparently is what the mer people in the Little Mermaid universe eat. And salads are gross without croutons, so we're making seaweed chips, which is basically a sheet of rice paper and nori stuck together, and then when the rice paper hits the hot oil, it puffs and becomes this super satisfying, bubbly, crispy, crunchy chip. And once they're done, I of course top them with some sea salt. I chose to go with a miso maple dressing to keep on theme with the umami, almost briny oceanic flavors. So I tried to be artsy and spread some on the bottom of the plate so that the greens wouldn't wilt, and then piled them on top and carefully hand placed every seaweed chip. And yeah, now I know that I said salads suck, but honestly, I think this was one of my favorite courses. But before we dwell on that, let's move on to the main course. The song I'm actually most excited for is Clairvaux, because we've seen the magic she's created with the last great American dynasty, and not only celebrating other women, but also using their story to tell her own. A quick history lesson on Clara: she was an iconic silent movie actress who was dubbed the original It Girl, but because of that, she was sexualized and continuously harassed and scrutinized by the media. And we can speculate that there are definitely some parallels between the two extremely talented women, but I'm just excited to hear what Taylor has to say in this song. So for our main course, I'm actually recreating a recipe from Clairvaux herself and making deviled oysters. Now, as someone who actually loves eating oysters, I was a little skeptical because we all know that those old vintage American foods are quite interesting, but I trust my girl Clara, so I started by shucking and chopping the oysters and making the filling. I followed her instructions and sauteed the green onions in some butter to make a roux along with the flour, milk, and cream, and heated it until it thickened like this. For the seasonings, we're adding some mustard, Worcestershire sauce, mushrooms, parsley, nutmeg, and salt, and cooked it all down for a few minutes. And to finish off the filling, I turned off the heat and stirred in the oysters and an egg yolk. So far looking pretty good. One thing that I do love about old American cooking is their flair for the dramatic. Like, look at how they present their food, and this is no different because we're stuffing the oyster shells with the oyster filling and topping them with breadcrumbs before we bake them. I love it. I plated them up each on a mound of salt, and these were definitely interesting, but after a while they tasted pretty good, very rich, very indulgent. But now onto the final course, dessert. If the theory that this album represents the stages of grief is in fact true, there is one song that screams acceptance to me, and that is The Alchemy. Alchemy is the medieval practice of transforming matter, most commonly transforming metals into gold. And I think this is a great metaphor for turning heartache and loss into gold, aka accepting what happened, learning from the experience, and living a happier life after the fact. So for our dessert course, I made hojicha cream puffs with a salted brown butter caramel cream, and for the final time, let me explain. I knew that I wanted to do a twist on Taylor's iconic chai cookies and incorporate some sort of earthy tea flavor into a pastry. So I chose to make cream puffs because I think the visual of cracking them open to expose what's on the inside is a cool way to showcase the theme of alchemy. Like on the outside, it's a simple gray plain looking tea pastry, but then you look on the inside and you find a rich, decadent, golden caramel filling. For the actual cream puffs, I'm making a classic choux pastry which starts on the stove by heating together water, milk, and butter. And once it starts to bubble, you then aggressively stir in the flour until the dough forms into a ball. Then get ready for an arm workout because once the dough cools a bit, you incorporate the eggs one at a time until the batter resembles flowing lava. Pipe the batter to form 1-inch mounds on your baking sheet and then gently press a disc of the hojicha cracklin onto each one. This is what's going to add the flavor but also give us those beautiful crispy crackly tops. This is my pride and joy, my homemade brown butter salted caramel, and we're going to incorporate that into a standard vanilla cream patisserie. Just imagine I said that with a French accent. But that starts with tempering the egg yolks, cornstarch, and vanilla with warm milk, and once that's combined, return it to the stove with the caramel and cook it on low until it thickens into a pudding-like consistency. At this point, try your best to refrain from eating it all because once it's chilled, we're going to fold in a bit of sweetened whipped cream to get the texture super velvety and fluffy. Then for the most satisfying part, filling the cream puffs, you basically want to inject as much cream as possible into each one, and then once you're done, you end up with this beautiful creation. And I don't know if it's just the sweet tooth in me, but this was by far my favorite course and the perfect conclusion to the menu. Okay, before I sign off, I just want to say that the album is so incredible. I think my favorite song so far is Guilty as Sin, but let me know yours in the comments and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.